Good. Good evening, everyone. This is a public hearing of the Zoning Board of Appeals of the City of Evanston. The zoning ordinance empowers this board to hear references from the City Council, applications for variances and special uses, and appeals from decisions of the zoning administrator. Depending on the type of matter, we'll either make a final determination or send a recommendation to the City Council. I'm Lori Summers, the current chair. Present here with me tonight are board members Matthew Rogers, Beth McLennan, Clara Weinberg, Scott Gingold, and Andrew Gallimore. We therefore have a quorum. Also here tonight from city staff are Melissa Klotz, Dennis Marino, and Ken Cox. This is a formal hearing and we have rules that govern our proceedings. Our most important rule is that only one person may speak at a time. It is not just civility, but it's necessary to accurately record our proceedings. Anyone who wishes to address the board regarding any matter on the agenda will have an opportunity to do so at the appropriate time. Our normal procedure is that we hear first from the staff on the documents in the file. We will then receive testimony and other evidence from the applicant or appellant. After the applicant or appellant has completed their initial submission, any person who has a legal interest in real property located within 500 feet of the property that is the subject of the application or appeal may then present evidence, reasonably question witnesses, or seek a continuance of the hearing. Next, others who wish to make a statement regarding the matter may do so at that time. When all opposing testimony and other statements have been received, the applicant or appellant will be given an opportunity for rebuttal or a closing statement. Board members may ask questions of anyone offering testimony or statements at any time. All testimony and statements will be under oath. Although we do not apply the strict rules of evidence, we ask that you limit your testimony or statement to your own personal knowledge. When you testify or make a statement, please tell us your name and address, and be sure that your name is printed on the sign-up sheet at the entrance. Because we do not have a court reporter, it is imperative that you speak at our microphone so that your testimony or statement will be recorded. We are audio and video recorded in this space and subject to broadcast. When all of the testimony, other evidence, and statements have been received, we will close the record and begin our deliberations. We usually try to adjourn around 10:30 and also try not to pull in a new matter after 10 p.m. So we do have a full agenda this evening, and we'll try to watch out for that and advise you as we go along. First item on our agenda this evening is approval of the minutes from our April 2nd, 2013 meeting. Are there any comments or corrections? I just had a couple, Melissa. The first page, fourth paragraph down, the end of the third sentence, third row, considered, I would say, probably towards a hardship, not necessarily a hardship. And I think there was some confusion on page 3 under zoning board entered into deliberation, the second bullet. I think there's just some confusion in the statement there. Essentially, I kind of questioned the conformity of those other lots, but that's not really applicable to this case. The more prudent matter is that I believe that I said something to the effect that the corner lot is often split up and not so uncommon that it would warrant kind of the seriousness of a side yard variation. So I don't know if you want to kind of look at that and better word that, but I don't think it had anything to do with the alley access there. And that was all I had. If there's nothing else, is there a motion regarding approval of those minutes?
I move that we adopt our minutes from the meeting on April 2nd, 2013 with the few changes recommended by Chairman Summers.
I second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 And I will note for the record that Member Weinberg was not present at the meeting and therefore has not voted. So the motion is carried on that. And moving on to our next item of business, we have the continuation of our hearing regarding 1622 Forest Place. I believe I would first of all remind everybody that you still are under oath if you were sworn in our last time, although you will excuse me if I kind of check in with you as we go along. I believe we ended the last time, Mr. Scott, you had stated that you were completed with your presentation. Is that still correct?
That's correct, Madam Chair.
Okay, so we'll note that Mr. Scott has indicated that the presentation on behalf of the applicant is complete. We had also, because of the late hour, taken in some public comment with respect to the proposal so that those who had made the effort to come out would not need to come back. But I believe we do have for the record an additional letter, Melissa, that has been received since the last meeting. So I will note for the record that an additional letter from NSC Termoen from 640 Michigan Avenue has also been received and will be entered into the record. Was there anyone else who wished to speak to us regarding 1622 Forest Place? Anyone from the public who wished to make a comment? Sir, if you could come up.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir. Were you sworn in last time?
I was not.
Okay. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth throughout the course of these proceedings?
I do.
Thank you, sir. And if you could give us your name and address before you begin.
You bet. My name is Tom O'Brien, and I live at 210 Davis Street, which I think is within the 500-foot impact zone.
Thank you.
And unfortunately, I couldn't be here at the last meeting. And I suppose that I would express one concern which has been unaddressed, which is the allowed density for this kind of B&B establishment in any neighborhood in Evanston, in particular the neighborhood I live in, where this B&B and the most recent B&B were approved. There will be quite a large number of these large older homes going for sale in the next 5 years. I know lots of the people who live in them, and there will be a lot of transactions. And my concern is that this neighborhood could turn into kind of a ground zero for B&Bs. Now, I don't want to overblow it and say that, every house is going to be a bed and breakfast, but I don't believe that there is no impact of having more B&Bs in a neighborhood as opposed to less on the quality of life in the neighborhood, the property values in the neighborhood, et cetera. So, my concern is we now have two within, 50 feet of each other, maybe 75 feet. And where do 3, 4, and 5 go? And are we setting any sort of precedent as a town and a board for approval of a second B&B in such close proximity to the first one? So that was the gist of what I wanted to share.
Thank you, sir. And actually, I'm going to just clarify for you because I think you're just off my property map here. You're close to the corner of Sheridan and Davis there?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm just east of, it's actually Forest. Well, I'm between Forest and Sheridan on Davis.
Right.
Right.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Was there anyone else who wished to speak with us at this time? Going through a few things, somewhat on the vein of Mr. O'Brien's comment, Melissa, we had talked about looking at just getting an understanding. We understand it was not approved, but there was discussion via the Plan Commission regarding a recommendation for proximity. Do you know where that discussion evolved to?
I believe the Plan Commission recommendation was that a buffer of 900 feet from property line to property line for bed and breakfasts be established.
Scott, did you have any comments or response with respect to the other testimony that we heard, or other sort of summation that you would care to provide to us?
Thank you very much. Actually, before you do close the record, I noted that there was a letter that was sent that you incorporated into the record from, I believe it was somebody at 640 North Michigan Avenue. If I could have the opportunity to review that before you close the record.
Absolutely. Take your time.
I don't have any further comments at this time. Thank you.
You don't? Okay. We're kind of jumping into discussion very quickly after having been away from it for a few weeks here. But well, I'm sort of wondering if we're at close the record point. So I don't know if you guys want to kind of, if there's any thoughts that we want to get out here and try to see if we are at close the record point. Anybody have any opinions, thoughts?
I have some thoughts, but they're post-close the record deliberation thoughts.
Okay. Let me just run through my notes here, make sure I get everything. Actually, Mr. Scott, I did have one question. I don't know if it's for you or from more of a design side, and I'm failing to find my drawing right now of the upper story, but I wanted to understand a little bit, now that I'm just checking my notes here, on the, given that there's no penalty in terms of number of bedrooms in the home, or there's no variance required with respect to the number of the bedrooms in the home, as long as you stay within the limit that's allowed for the bed and breakfast in terms of the rooms that are rented. So I guess I found it a little bit odd in terms of the upper floor plan, why that wasn't just called out as like a second bedroom and bathroom for that kind of master or owner suite up there. I was just wanting to understand, I guess, all the closets that are up there, and I guess I wanted to understand more about how you guys thought that space would really be used, since it seems like it's another bed and a bathroom.
Are you referring to the third level, the master suite?
Yes.
Okay. And the question is,
I guess I'm just trying to make sure that we're all, we've kind of talked a lot about the function of a lot of the other spaces as we go up, and how they are used and how they apply to the bed and breakfast, but there's a lot of space up there that I'm trying to make sure, trying to understand how it's used. Is it used as part of the bed and breakfast? Is it, it just seems odd to me that it's basically another bedroom with a closet and another bathroom space, but that it wouldn't just be called out as that.
It's the master suite for the owner. I mean, I think the proportions, I don't know if anybody's had the opportunity to see this home, but it is a very, very large home just in terms of floor plates and square footage. So perhaps the magnitude is heightened, but it's really a master suite for Dawn. And the expectation is that if you do have, anywhere from 5 to 10 guests, and maybe they're congregating down in the kitchen, or maybe they're on the second floor, this is an opportunity for, perhaps if Dawn has friends over at the same time that she does have a full house, that it's an opportunity, it's a place where she can have guests and not necessarily interfere with the experience of guests of the B&B.
Yeah, and I actually understand that quite a bit, and I understand that you might even want a guest bedroom for yourself, for your family to come and stay with you up on that third floor. So, I don't know, it just seemed the space and the layout there seemed somewhat weird, and I just wanted to kind of get to the bottom of making sure that
Can you specify
there wasn't a
which
future interpretation that would be like another, that wasn't left off because it would become a future rental room or something like that.
It won't become a future rental room, and it won't be there's a limit. The city has already set a limit as to the number of rooms in a bed and breakfast, and that's 5. And you can't have any additional renters or boarders in the home. And I think I can speak very confidently that there won't be additional boarders. We're not going to have a 6th bedroom up there that somebody may want to use, that will get rented out. It's not going to happen. It's going to be her master suite. I guess if you could specify what's weird about it.
I was actually I'm realizing now the reason I can't find the plan is because it was in that big set that you guys had that we were going to get copies of.
We have boards, if that helps.
It's a 3rd floor, and when you get up to the top of the 3rd floor, there's basically a room that's like a bedroom. It has a closet off of it, and it has a second closet off of it that's the exact same size as a bathroom down, a typical bathroom. And it's kind of an odd scenario, and we're just kind of sensitive, I guess, to how, odd scenarios that can lead to future things that are not compliant. So I'm just trying to understand the thought process there so that there's no confusion there whatsoever.
I mean, we can bring the board up. I think that, the intent is, and as we've testified, we're going to comply with all other city ordinances. That's the intent, the bed and breakfast included.
Well, I guess half my point is there's nothing wrong with calling it a bedroom, which is the part that makes me a little bit nervous, is that it's not called a bedroom.
I call it a master suite. You can call it a bedroom. I mean, however you want to.
Well, you can see right here, closet. There's a big closet that's basically the size of a bedroom. And then off of it is another closet. And then adjacent to it is another quote-unquote closet that's the exact same size as a bathroom.
I think hi, my name's Paul Janicki.
Actually, Paul, I'm going to have to get you.
You might want to swear him in.
Oh, yeah. You had another representative last time. Sorry, Mr. Janicki. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth throughout the course of these proceedings?
I do.
Thank you, sir.
I'm Paul Janicki.
I mean, are those existing spaces?
Yeah, what it is if you, it's hard to see, but there are all these dotted lines because the roof is impinging on all these rooms.
Right.
So you can't actually walk around the perimeter of the room. You have to kind of on one edge of the room, and that's why some of the spaces look really big, but they're actually.
So what's your knee wall height like?
Knee wall is like
approximately
4'6" mostly.
4'6" on that
so
one?
yeah, in some cases 3'0". So
yeah, I don't mind the space. I don't mind the space of the whole rest of the master suite. What kind of concerns me is when there's spaces that look like they should be another whole bedroom suite, and they're not labeled that, and I'm kind of wondering, okay, what are we doing here?
Right. Well, for instance, more recently we've talked about this being Dawn's office because there's just not that much room here for her office, and she does a lot of work in-house. So, it's basically the footprint of the attic is very small if for as far as headroom, walking around, and
Understood.
And it's. You've got this space. We just try to utilize it all. It can't be used for any bed and breakfast purposes, so it really falls to Dawn's space.
Okay.
So we try to make it as nice as we could for her because this is really where she lives.
Okay, but there are no other kind of specific future intentions there for that space.
No, well, there can't be because bed and bread ordinance says you can only have 5.
Yeah, it's. I think as an architect, you can probably look at that and see that it's, having closets off of whatever, it kind of
Well, yeah, well, like I said,
It begs questions.
Sure. This
So-
is kind of a storage for this deck out here. This is going to be
So,
her office.
okay.
This is her clothes closet. This is a coat closet at the front door. So basically now you've seen all the closets. So
Right.
it's,
Okay.
it's kind of like a standard apartment plan almost, really.
It
really doesn't really
basically
lend
is,
it,
and
right, it doesn't
there's-
lend itself as a really bed and breakfast. People don't come to bed and breakfast to live like in an attic
No, it
apartment,
basically
really.
is, and there's no, I guess what bothered me was there would be no harm. There's nothing zoning or building wise that wouldn't allow you to call it a bedroom, and the fact that it wasn't called a bedroom set off red flags with me.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't think there's even
where are
room
we
to
going?
put a bed in here,
Okay.
actually, and stand up and not hit your head when you wake up in the morning,
Okay.
which would be a bummer, but
all right, I think I understand that a little bit more. And actually, I'm going to steal that just
Sure,
for
sure.
the rest of our discussion here. Thanks.
I had a question for Mr. Scott. So the home, it'll still be zoned as R1, so you'll just be paying, the owners will be paying Evanston property taxes. Are there other additional taxes or lodging fees or anything while it's being operated as a bed and breakfast that the city would stand to realize through that operation?
I mean, you can have your typical utility taxes, sort of water fees. My recollection in my reading of your revenue code is that, I'm not sure, I don't want to say specifically, but I think that there's no hotel tax that's applicable in a bed and breakfast. I'm not saying that for certain, but of course, if it were applicable, we're certainly going to pay those
Right.
taxes as well.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
Okay, any other questions? All right, I think.
Can I note one more thing for the
Sure.
record that I forgot when I came up here? We've had a lot of testimony from folks that are 500, 1,000 feet away. I think it is telling that the folks that are on either side of this property and also of Church Street have not appeared, have not submitted any testimony in opposition to the application.
Thank you.
Nor in favor, I'd add.
I would question, is one of those homes not owned and the private residence of the applicant's business, Mr. Pritzker? Does he not live at Church Street directly behind the other bed and breakfast?
Yes, he lives to the west, but the two homes on the either side of Forest Place is what I was referring to.
And are those owned by private individuals, do you know?
I believe they are.
Okay.
That's correct.
Thank you. Last call, anyone else before you close the record then on this case? Oh, sorry, I think I see a hand. I'm gonna have to wait till you get up here to, in fact, you might need to pull that down a little bit.
Cooper
that
from
way.
420 Church Street.
And Ms. Cooper, can I swear you in then at this time?
Sure.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth throughout the course of these proceedings?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I have a letter that I'd also like to be put in the record of these notes. And I've been thinking kind of at a higher helicopter view about this whole situation. And I have a couple of points I'd like to make. In Mr. Scott's presentations and other presentations and comments about people in this district, the mention of the economic benefit to Evanston comes up. And as I understand it, the benefit is that guests will be shopping in Evanston. I mean, that's the economic benefit, is it not? They're not a hotel. They will pay school taxes. But I don't see a huge economic benefit as it's been sold.
I mean, certainly, I don't know if I certainly can't quantify it, but there is some level of, yes, there is some level of expectation with respect to
Right.
shopping, dining, entertainment, et cetera.
And a lot of the numbers that have been presented, I think it's important to remember that they're just projections. You know, some people, you hear that it'll bring this or bring that, or the income will be such and such, and we have to remember that it's based on economic indicators, which change as fast as they can these days with the international situation. So it's certainly very hopeful, but I think we should bear that in mind. The second point is that there was a comment made that the effect of the bed and breakfast will have the same effect as if a family were living next door to the bed and breakfast. And I don't think that's exactly the case. There is a coming and going of guests into the bed and breakfast, which for them is a temporary visit. The neighbors have a huge investment in their house and in their children and their yard and their schools and in the community. And there's a whole different ambiance that's next door versus at the bed and breakfast. Since the owner doesn't live in the bed and breakfast, there's also a different ambiance there if it's an owner running it versus a manager. And I just think that we need to be careful about that point, that it's a kind of cozy place. The other thing has to do with the noise. It was stated that the innkeeper would be careful of the noise. I'm not sure what the rule has been. I heard that it was going to be the same as for parties, which was 11 o'clock. Isn't there some late noise rule?
Well, there are general kind of nuisance ordinances with the city, where certain amounts of noise after.
But I also suggest that there's a difference in the definition of a noise that might be at the bed and breakfast versus next door at the neighbor's house. And, there's babies going to bed and there's people sitting outside and all that kind of thing. I don't know, I'm sorry, I don't know have the number of events been limited?
Nothing has been defined at this point, and least of all, any sort of number of special events that could be.
Yeah, but nonetheless, there's a certain amount of noise. Even I noticed it not having any parties out in the street. There's people walking back and forth, because I live in Church Street. There's a lot of traffic, even at night, going down to the beach and slamming doors and conversations and all that kind of thing. If you have your windows open, and all I'm saying is there's a different. I think there may be a different noise level, and I certainly hope that there'll be a conversation with their neighbors about kind of what's going on, or at the very least warning to them that there is going to be noise that night. And the third point I'd like to make is there was a statement that no one on the North Shore or no one in this lake district on the lake can afford to buy these big houses anymore. They can't afford to buy them. They can't afford to maintain them. And I have a sheet of paper that shows houses that were bought as of this year, all of them over $1 million up to $1.5 million, and most of them were on the market an average of 10 days. So I think that the comment that no one can afford these anymore is kind of not particularly pertainable. And then the last thing I'd like to do is submit a map. It's the map from the internet where I've X'd the houses, and so you can see, it's a very good visual at where you can see, and I'll pass it out to the rest of you. Can I bring it up and show it to you?
Sure. I'm going to.
It's a good visual, so you can see.
Sorry. If you're going to talk, I need you to be on sorry, ma'am. I need you to be on a microphone if you're going to talk.
The houses, you can see the houses, and I'll give you copies that go around the corner of Church, plus this house on Judson. It's just like this perfect little swath of land. And I know that the term land banking has been mentioned a couple of times. I believe that Dawn mentioned it at the last meeting. And if that's the case, here's a perfect situation for it. It's just the prime view on the lake. I just want to make that point. So can I give you this?
Yeah, and since you're on the other side of the dais here, I'm going to ask if you can give one of those to. You have multiple copies?
Yeah.
Can you give
Sure. I'll bring
one to Mr. Scott? Oh.
I'll bring them up. I even have staples. Why don't you give that back to me?
No, we don't need. You have multiple copies, though.
Yeah.
Okay, if you could give one to Mr. Scott, then I would appreciate it over on the end there.
Thank you.
Yeah, let me see here.
She didn't follow what you were asking.
No, I think she's getting them. All right, so we have 4 sheets here with the map, addresses, and a letter from, an outline from Ms. Cooper outlining basically the information that she's provided here. And I'm just going to put this under appellants and then Cooper so that.
Mr. Scott, can I ask you a question related to that testimony? I can't remember who from the applicant's team did testify about the economic benefits to Evanston, but has your group done any kind of study as to what the expected incremental economic benefit to the city would be?
To answer your second question, no, there hasn't been a study of economic impact. To the first point, I was going to say I don't think we have testified as to the economic impacts. I think what we have said is that it's the intent of ownership to engage Evanston businesses to sort of have people frequent the restaurant, shops, and that type of thing. And
okay.
And I mean, I'm glad you actually raised that point because her commentary was, this really isn't going to have that much of an economic impact. And I think if you accept that premise, you also have to accept the premise that it's not this major commercial enterprise that everybody makes it out to be. That it is just what it is. It is a single-family home with the owner living in it who rents out rooms to guests that come to Evanston.
Yeah, I'm not sure I agree with your conclusion that one has anything to do with the other. Whether the enterprise is commercial for the development company that's putting a B&B into a single-family home is a different question than whether or not it has an incremental impact on the city in addition.
I guess my point was...
Those are people that otherwise might stay at the Hotel Orrington.
That's correct, or they may stay downtown Chicago and want to spend 2 days up in Evanston, whatever the case may be. But
right.
I'm just simply saying that, I think that the level of economic impact to the city of Evanston is commensurate with the nature of the alleged commercial use in this home. It's just everybody says this is going to ruin the lakefront. It's over-commercialization of the lakefront. My only point is that its economic impact isn't that huge in terms of use of people coming and spending tons of dollars. It's not a 400-room Hilton. There's going to be a lot of economic impact, I think, as a result of all the construction jobs that are going to be created and all the investment in the home. But that was my only point in terms of I think those two are tied.
Ms. Cooper, did you say you had more copies? Okay. Actually, right, I think we can pass this one down, but if you could get one to Mr. Scott, then that would be my main priority at the moment. Thank you, Mr. Scott. I'm going to give a moment to let that pass down, and then if we have nothing further, we will close the record. Melissa, do you know if trash for facilities like this gets switched over to a commercial system?
I am not aware of that.
Mr. Scott, did you have anything further on that?
I don't. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, it looks like the information has made it the way through, and if there's nothing further, then we will close the record on this case and begin our deliberations. Does anyone want to go first?
I'll go first. First off, I'd like to mention that I was the only one who voted for the last bed and breakfast. And I still think that a bed and breakfast is a very viable use business. I do not necessarily have a problem with an LLC operating one. That the commercialization, I don't think, is a major issue. That being said, I do have a few concerns about this particular property, and some of the other ones, some other properties that may become beds and breakfasts. And that is, my first concern really is about the proximity of this location to the existing location. Having a house situated, only one house situated between the two, is a little troubling to me. Just like when we look at any sort of a special use, we look at the number of that special use in a certain area. So I would be concerned about that. While I am very pleased that Mr. Pritzker is investing his money into restoring these old historic homes, I have a second concern in the fact that the amount of money being invested is really pushing these homes up into price points that could never be recouped. And unless he intends to sell these at some point in the future for a loss, or someone would end up having to sell it for a loss, this would be a $9 million home by the time we look at the purchase price and the rehab costs of it. Which does trouble me as to what becomes of this property down the road. Whether it's a continues to remain a bed and breakfast, or should revert back to a single family home. Those are just my general thoughts.
I agree with the points you made. Largely. I wasn't one of the voting members when the last case came up. I was at the first meeting where we took all the testimony, but not the second one where we discussed most of it. I would have voted against it, and I was going to note that this board voted against it 4-1. In fact, it was the same, Mr. Scott, the same lawyer, came and presented the case. The minutes, which I've reviewed from that meeting, Mr. Scott indicated that there wasn't some kind of grand plan to have a series of bed and breakfasts in this neighborhood. But here we are, less than a year later, listening to the same lawyer proposed the second one with at least two other properties owned by the same owner in the neighborhood, potentially in line. The issues that I would have had I voted on it 8 months ago are existent here. The one that bothers me the most is I don't believe that the municipal code section that creates a special use for bed and breakfasts had the intention of having corporate financiers create LLCs and sticking a manager/owner on the property to run the bed and breakfast. Instead, I think as former Chairman Creamer noted at the time, this ordinance section was created for homeowners to, on a hobby basis or in order to be able to finance the payments on their home after their children had moved out, create secondary uses for their homes. I have a fear, especially on this property near the university and facing the lakefront, that we are being positioned to set up a series of businesses along the lakefront that will not only change the character of the neighborhood, but also, I fear, especially in the cumulative, have a very negative impact on the homes in the neighborhood that are not bed and breakfasts.
What sort of businesses are you thinking?
Bed and breakfasts.
Oh, you're not saying that they would morph into something other than a bed and breakfast. You're just saying bed and breakfast, full stop.
Yes.
Okay.
So, I mean, I will vote against this. I feel very strongly against our board recommending it to City Council. I think as we go through the criteria for granting a special use that there are a number of them that I would disagree are met here.
I agree with Scott, and I also agree with the neighbor, testified today, and I apologize, I was not here at the last presentation, but I do think that it diminishes the neighborhood characteristic. This neighborhood's already busy with cars, but there are families there, and the anonymity of a bed and breakfast owned by a corporate entity does not foster the community that Evanston's known for, and that this area particularly needs to reinforce. So I too am against it.
I actually disagree pretty strongly with Member Gingold and Member Weinberg. I think I probably come at this from a slightly different perspective. I've lived for a number of years in some very well-kept, nice resort communities that have bed and breakfasts in residential neighborhoods. And my take on this is that this is going to be a very meticulous, expensive, well-done renovation, which I also highly applaud the LLC for taking on. I feel that this is going to be an excellent adaptive reuse of this home. I don't necessarily see a grand future for this home as just a family moving in. I appreciate Ms. Cooper's real estate findings, but this house is going to be priced considerably above $1 million, and unfortunately it does not have beach access. The houses that sell for multi-millions in the North Shore have private beach access. There's no question about that. It is often the case. It is often the case. This house has no beach access. It actually fronts on a public park, which is heavily used year-round by all sorts of people that are coming to enjoy the lake and all the amenities that the lake have to provide. So back to my original where I was going with that. I am curious as to why I noted in the minutes that there were a number of residents that did come out in favor of the previous proposal at 300 Church, and I'm concerned, and I am a little concerned that we didn't have anybody coming out in favor for this one. So that does give me pause. I do take the neighbors' concerns seriously, and that there are so many people against this one when there were apparently lots of people for the other one. It does give me a little bit of pause. However, I do want to say that I think it's going to be a quality renovation. I think it's going to be well done, and I do not see a well done, relatively expensive bed and breakfast as any kind of blight on the neighborhood. The people that are going to come and stay are going to be very respectful of the area. They want to be here. They want to have that sort of interaction with a town that's a much, much closer and more personal and more intimate than they're going to get at a hotel. So they're not, in my personal experience with living side by side, around bed and breakfasts, the clientele, they're not a risk to the neighborhood. So I don't have a problem with this use. And I do agree with most of the comments that Matt made. I do have some concerns about it. Seems that for whatever reason there's not as much neighbor support on this proposal as perhaps there was on 300. But that is really my only concern here. So.
I guess I would take exception to the assumption that there's diminished viability of real estate along the lakefront or park area along Sheridan Road for Evanston. I don't remember seeing any testimony saying that any of the real estate along Sheridan Road is of diminished value now, or has no future for it, and therefore we should relinquish it.
I'm sorry. I guess I didn't phrase that correctly. Once the money, as was presented in testimony, this house is no longer going to be for sale for $2 million. The work they're going to do on this house is going to become what did we say? An $8 or $9 million house. My point with that is that sort of house, that sort of price point lends itself to private beach access, and pretty much only private beach access. Can we name? I'm not going to get into a real estate. I know this house sold for X. But my point is this house at the price point, once they put the money in that they're talking that they're going to put in, I don't see it as a single family is going to buy it.
I think Member Rogers was raising that as a potential negative here, in that the work proposed to be done to this property will price it out of any kind of residential use for the future. It's kind of like giving it up.
Right.
That work has to be done, though. Otherwise, the house just sits there in disrepair, vacant.
But if you look at the work that is being done, is that it is converting it away from a single-family home, because not too many single-family homes have a bathroom attached to every bedroom.
At this scale, they do.
No.
This scale, they do.
At a $9 million house has every bedroom has a bathroom. There's a game room. There's a media room. There's an exercise room.
I've done a $2 million house that had a bathroom on every single bedroom.
And how many bedrooms were in the house?
Upstairs, 1, 2, 6.
Okay.
And keep in mind, even though there's going to be $8 or $10 million spent on the house, it won't necessarily be a $10 million house when it's done. Cost doesn't necessarily equal value. So
no,
they could spend $10 million, and it could be a $3 million house.
Well, you aren't going to put 5.5 into it and only see a realization of another $500,000 on your value. I would hope not.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean this to get into a conversation about real estate prices on the North Shore. I will stand by my comment, though, that the house doesn't have private beach access, which makes it less desirable for the price point that it's going to be at when it gets sold. That's all. My opinion.
I've traveled I probably spent about 1,000 nights in hotels over the last 4 years. And I'll say I think Evanston's hotel options are kind of lacking to me personally. And I've been to many college towns where they've integrated bed and breakfasts quite favorably into the community and given it like a really nice small town college feel. So I don't necessarily see this as a negative. I mean, there might be, maybe we want to have some limit on how many we can have or the proximity, but I don't necessarily see it as a negative, especially at this price point. I don't think it's, a small, inexpensive house where you're going to have, the problems we've had with other illegal rentals in the past. I think at this price point, and just the scale of the yard itself is going to mitigate a lot of the noise that, people are worried about hearing chattering at nighttime and things like that. These aren't your standard 35 by 125 foot lots.
Although it didn't necessarily pan out that way in the summarization of the previous meeting, I would have to say that actually in general I was in favor of the previous bed and breakfast proposal in concept, in terms of having the occasional bed and breakfast out in this area. And in that particular case, it came down more to kind of technicalities for me of parking and the situation with the coach house and things like that. I mean, we've got some opinion from council with respect to the coach house, and I think that if there can be limitations with respect to that space for, a minimum 1-year lease or something like that, so it's not part of the bed and breakfast, then I can see that issue is taken care of, and certainly the parking is taken care of in this situation, which as a whole, on the concept of bed and breakfast, sort of brings me to a generally positive side, with the sort of caveat that has been expressed a little bit here, of understanding sort of the potential kind of negative cumulative effect and coordination with the comprehensive general plan. And I think my issue on this one is, again, sort of going to be from a technical standpoint, but maybe more from like a comprehensive general plan standpoint. I don't necessarily think, it's out of our purview, but I don't necessarily think it would be the end of the world if Evanston said that this was the type of lakefront future that they envisioned. I think it happens in many places, but and quite successfully. I think the issue for me is that I don't see discussion of that within the other boards and council, and inclusion of that into the comprehensive general plan, so that we understand that that's kind of the direction that we're headed for the lakefront. Because I feel like 2 houses down is not an occasional bed and breakfast. It's starting to create a different type of use along that corridor that I'm just not seeing being recognized in our planning. So it's kind of from that technical standpoint that I sort of look at it, where the decision of whether or not to say, Evanston's lakefront becomes I've visited and very much enjoyed lakefronts and ocean fronts that were row house after row house after row house of bed and breakfast and that sort of thing, and those can be great things, but I don't see that as our purview to be making the decision of whether or not we're changing to that.
Well, let's go back to what you had asked staff earlier. If the zoning is being proposed to actually change to where there needs to be 900 feet between each property.
It was not carried through. It was just, but there was public discussion from the Plan Commission and some aldermen on that committee.
Right. So what happens if there's 2 that obviously don't meet that definition, they're grandfathered in?
Yes.
Or, I mean,
If it were ever changed, then they would be grandfathered in for the
Right.
continuation of that use.
I just wanted to respond to Member Gallimore's comment. Just so that there's not any confusion about my stance, I don't have a problem with bed and breakfasts, and our ordinance provides for a special use for bed and breakfasts. However, my position is that it was not the intent of the ordinance to have corporations coming in and creating business opportunities out of people's single-family homes. That's not what that was created for. Now, I try to put myself in the position of my neighbors or the people who are within 500 feet of the property when I think about whether the intent of the ordinance is being served. And if I lived there, I'd be very disturbed that a corporation bought my next-door neighbor's house and is converting it into a business. I would probably not be happy if it was being converted to a bed and breakfast use for the intent that it was created, but I'm doubly disturbed by a corporation making it a business. That's not what the ordinance intended. That's not what this section of the ordinance or special use was intended to foster.
So if the previous owner had converted to a bed and breakfast after his children moved out, would you have still feelings against that use then?
I think that I would have a harder time voting against it. It's very easy for me to vote against this proposed use because I don't believe that this is the intent of the ordinance.
I don't have a problem with it, and just because, the reason I don't, I totally understand the point you're making, but I think that we're getting awfully fearful about the term LLC, and I don't see that. I mean, it's just a commonly done way to run small businesses. I don't see it as, and we can sit here and say, oh, but it's the Pritzkers or whatever, and I find that actually extremely offensive that we would even entertain some sort of notion that because it's Pritzker money that we don't like it for some reason. I do find that actually kind of.
I hope you're not suggesting that was anybody on this board's position.
I feel that I've kind of heard that from some of the testimony. I do. I feel there's been sort of an undercurrent of, what is this LLC business and who's this guy coming in and doing this? I'm not saying that you are, but to the point though, an LLC, I just don't find it it's not a scary big corporation. It's a commonly, you know what an LLC is. You're a lawyer.
Right. So that's sort of my point. Like, this is an LLC setting up a corporation where a financier puts 99% of the money into the corporation and then sticks a manager with the other 1% and calls them the quote-unquote owner so that they can fit the definition of what a bed and breakfast is not what this ordinance intended.
And so what if our potential, the person that the ordinance did fit, was advised by his attorney to go ahead and set up an LLC to practice his bed and breakfast that he was doing after his kids moved out.
Different. That's a completely different hypothetical.
It's still an LLC.
It's not the existence of the LLC that's the problem.
It's
in
the
my
percentage of the owner occupant versus the LLC. I think
right.
Is what Scott's saying.
Okay.
And
I understand the point you're making.
I find it interesting that the comparison that's being made is to some sort of resort living that makes it a more a palatable opportunity. When we're really trying to foster is the maintenance of a community, of a residential and of an R1 zoning. We're not trying to create a resort area off of Sheridan Road. That's not the intent of the zoning code. So I find it interesting that that's what is being seen as what's making it palatable.
All right. I think all said our piece, and with that, we will apply those through the standards for a special use, as this is an application for special use for the operation of a bed and breakfast in the R1 zoning district. And therefore, our first standard is that the request of special use is on the list of special uses in the zoning ordinance for that district, and it is. Standard number 2, the requested special use is in keeping with the purposes and policies of the comprehensive general plan and the zoning ordinance. I think to summarize, I noted my concerns with respect to the comprehensive general plan, and I've heard several comments with respect to the intent of the bed and breakfast zoning ordinance. So therefore, I'm going to say that this standard has not been met, and I think we'll just do a quick roll call down here so that we
I agree
can
that it has
record
not
this.
been met.
It has not been met.
It has been met.
I think it has been met.
I believe it has been met as well.
Okay.
I would just add in here also that, I mean, we just addressed this a short period of time ago, and it was raised up through Plan Commission, through council, et cetera, and no one in the final decision decided that this needed to be changed.
I'm not tracking your comment. Can you
Council had information presented through the Plan Commission and decided not to impose any additional restrictions, any additional ordinances, which was totally within their ability to do.
You mean on 300 Church?
After 300 Church came through.
No, yeah.
So
So he's talking
what-
about they didn't make any modifications to the zoning ordinance, which would be applicable to the comments with respect to the
Percentage of ownership.
interpretation of the bed and breakfast zoning ordinance
So
portion.
what you're saying, just so I'm clear, is you're saying that right now the zoning ordinance provides for a special use of a bed and breakfast in an R1 neighborhood.
Correct. It does not address who, as long as an owner is there. We've gotten the direction that this qualifies as an owner. We may not like the particular arrangement that has been set up, but that it does meet all of the legal specificities. And like I said, no one wanted to change those rules, and it's not any different than 300 Church was.
I agree with you completely, and I agree that while someone is of the opinion that this meets the letter of what an owner is, it doesn't meet the intent, in my view, of what the ordinance is meant to do, which is why I don't think it meets this criteria.
Thank you. And I would note, Matt, that I do generally agree. I do generally agree with your comments with respect to the zoning ordinance side of it, which is why I did clarify for comprehensive portion of that statement. Standard number 3: the special use will not cause a negative cumulative effect when its effect is considered in conjunction with the cumulative effect of various special uses of all types on the immediate neighborhood and the effect of the proposed type of special use upon the city as a whole. I believe that we are all in agreement that the proposed type of special use is certainly favorable to the city as a whole. And I imagine that I'm going to get a mixed bag with respect to whether or not the standard has been met in terms of negative cumulative effect. So we'll roll call that as well.
I have concerns that there might be a negative cumulative effect with the other bed and breakfast 75 feet away from this one.
I share the same concerns.
You
I
don't see them,
I
I presume?
I don't see them, but I am discouraged by the level of opposition in the neighborhood. So that does, like I said, it raises a bit of a red flag for me. I wish some people had have come out in support of this one.
Yeah.
This is the one that's caused me the greatest problem. I don't view a bed and breakfast as a negative effect on a neighborhood. So, what I do have an issue with is the fact that two are so close together, and what that means for the home in the middle and what that means for other homes directly adjacent to it. And if we allow two to be 75 feet, 100 feet, 150 feet, whatever it is, apart, the next person who comes to present this is going to say, but the last ones were closer. And so I do not feel that this has been met.
You know, I kind of struggle with this one a little bit, but I mean, in my extensive traveling, and I've always found it to be a benefit to the neighborhood to have bed and breakfast. So I don't see it as a negative per se.
I would see it as somewhat of a cumulative negative, again, with respect to the the implications that I think it has in terms of under the comprehensive general plan, and I don't. It could not be a negative cumulative, but it certainly would be with respect to if we were not looking to make it a row of bed and breakfasts. Scenario number 4, the requested special use does not interfere with or diminish the value of property in the neighborhood. I do not believe that this will diminish the value of property in the neighborhood. Is there consensus on that?
No, I disagree.
Okay.
I think it will diminish the value of property in the neighborhood, particularly considering the existence of the other bed and breakfast in the neighborhood.
Similarly, in terms of, as it's been stated before, the other properties are going to be judged against this considerable improvement, and their value won't be appreciated as much.
Okay.
So by comparison, yes, their value will go down.
And I met, or do you?
Met.
You don't have to say anything. You can just say that you believe it's met. You don't have
It's
to
met.
Go further.
I believe this one's met.
I think it's met.
Okay. Standard number 5, the requested special use can be adequately served by public facilities and services. Generally speaking, most of the upgrade with respect to this type of use will be in the private connections to services by the applicant. Not so much a significant increase on public draw for many of the public facilities. However, I would note, should it go forward, that there should be potential coordination consideration with respect to sort of the garbage pickup plan, if you will, and the potential need to impose some sort of requirement for commercial pickup for this type of use. Generally speaking, though, I believe that this standard has been met. Is there anyone who does not believe the standard has been met? So that's carried forward with all agreeing. Standard number 6, the requested special use does not cause undue traffic congestion. While this may bring a few more cars to the area, it's certainly a traveled area in general because of proximity to the beach. And I do find that the provision in this particular case of allowing for all of the required off-street parking spaces certainly does kind of mitigate concern with respect to off-street parking for bed and breakfast users, and as well as the potentiality of them driving around in circles trying to find parking spaces. So given the application that we have in front of us, I believe this standard has been met as well.
Agreed.
Agreed. Standard number 7, the requested special use preserves significant historical and architectural resources. The applicant has provided us with information with respect to the significant investment that will be put into maintaining and improving the property inside and out. There is an expectation that the coach house will be demolished and rebuilt, but that will have Preservation Commission oversight with respect to the historical nature of the property. So generally speaking, we are maintaining sort of the single-family and historical aspect of the house from an architectural perspective. So I believe this standard has been met.
Agreed.
Agreed.
I would just like to add on to that I don't think there's anyone here who doesn't recognize the significant impact that Mr. Pritzker is having and is able to put into the bed and breakfast that he currently owns and this potential one. I think his commitment to preserving the historical and architectural nature of Evanston is commendable, and I would say that this even goes beyond preserving and actually is an improvement because of the fact that he is taking the coach house, rebuilding it, the fact that everything that is going to be done or is proposed to be done will be done correctly.
Thank you. Statement number 8, the request of special use preserves significant natural and environmental features. It is our understanding that the general significant pervious surface of the property will be maintained, including the replacement of the existing drive with a paver system, and certainly the maintenance and improvement of the landscape to be done in coordination with the rest of the improvements around the home. So I believe this standard has been met as well.
Agreed.
Standard number 9, the requested special use complies with all other applicable regulations of the district in which it is located and other applicable ordinances, except to the extent which regulations have been modified through the plan development process or the grant of a variation. This use is not currently underway, so there's really not much for it to be non-compliant with. However, we note that it is compliant with the 5-bedroom limit that would be imposed, the 5-bedroom rental limit that would be imposed as part of a bed and breakfast by law. So I believe that standard has been met.
Agreed.
With that, is there anything further before we go to a recommendation? Just for conditions for me, I had kind of my comment about trash pickup, the no full kitchen in the 3rd floor as, defined by city staff. I think we had some conversation about what staff defines that to be last time. I also believe there should be a limitation of a minimum 1-year lease on the coach house to keep it without, outside of that bed and breakfast category. And of course, the application and substantial compliance category.
Let me see your notes here.
You want to go positive?
All right. In the matter 13 ZMJV 0017 regarding 1622 Forest Place, I would move that we recommend approval to City Council that the bed and breakfast be permitted to occupy this location as a special use with the conditions that the trash pickup be in compliance with a commercial establishment as opposed to a residential establishment if staff can sort of see to that. That there be no kitchen in the 3rd floor suite, which will be occupied by the owner-operator. That the coach house be limited to a minimum 1-year lease and not be considered part of the bed and breakfast, and that the building and renovations of the property be in substantial compliance with the documents and testimony submitted herein.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of the positive motion to council, please say aye.
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 All opposed?
Nay.
And the motion carries 4-2. is declined 4-2 to, I'm going to get that backwards. We have 2 for and 4 against. Let's put it that way. And we'll carry that forward to council. And with that, we will be done with 1622 Forest Place. Melissa, did you get PDFs of these?
I believe I did and forwarded them on to you.
Did I not see them? Did you send these to staff as a PDF?
Yes.
Okay. As long as they're in the record.
Yeah, they definitely are.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Everybody is set to continue? All right. Continuing on to our next order of business, we will be hearing 623 to 627.5 Howard Street. And if you could read that in, Melissa.
Douglas Lash, architect, applies for major zoning relief to eliminate 8 required off-street parking spaces for a Type 1 restaurant. The applicant requests to eliminate 8 required off-street parking spaces for a total of 0 off-street parking spaces. Zoning Code Section 616.35. The Zoning Board of Appeals makes a recommendation to City Council, the determining body for this case. Submitted with the application and included as part of the record. Variance application submitted March 27th, 2013. Standards form, zoning analysis, plat of survey dated October 7th, 2011. Proposed site plan, aerial map with parking locations, zoning map of property, images of property, and Spark meeting minutes from April 10th, 2013.
Okay.
I would like to just state for the record that I did receive notice on this. I do live within the 500 feet of this location, but I do not think that my judgment will be in any way influenced because of that.
Thank you. Okay, and at this time, could I swear in anyone who wishes to speak to us or thinks they may at all speak to us with respect to 1623, 1627.5 Howard Street?
Hi, I'm Douglas Lash, the architect,
Sorry, just a
applicant.
second. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth throughout the course of these proceedings?
I do.
Okay. And go ahead, Mr. Lash.
I'm Loretta Jackson,
Oh,
and I live at 146 Clyde.
and do you swear or affirm to tell the truth throughout the course of these proceedings?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Go ahead, sir.
Hello, I think you've all seen the plan in front of you, but just want to kind of give you any kind of details that I can that it's not stated, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those. So the plan is to basically gut the front portion of that building that fronts along Howard Street and turn all those tenant spaces into one restaurant that will serve about 125, 130 people. Then also one of the big ideas behind this property is to turn that courtyard also into seating for outdoor dining, which is very kind of lacking in Evanston in particular. And then there's a little link area that connects back to the garage. And in the garage, the owners of the restaurant would like to turn that into a microbrewery that would support the restaurant. So we're trying to utilize the whole piece of property as much as possible. And it's been underutilized for a number of years, including the garage in the back. Hasn't been used for parking in quite some time. But we will continue to keep the doors facing the alley with some repairs anyway. We'll have that same look on the alley side so that it will still look like a garage, but will be able to be used for bringing supplies in for the brewery and the restaurant, and also for a lot of storage for the restaurant as well.
And Mr. Lush, what are the options in terms of staff parking in this area?
There's a lot of street parking that's available. It's there's along Callan Avenue, there's parking all along there that tends to be pretty open. On Howard, the spaces tend to go unused throughout the day. There's a city lot further to the east on Howard, about maybe a block, half a block away. There's also a lot at the Sherwin-Williams store that we're trying to negotiate some kind of an agreement that we can utilize that for nighttime parking as well. So the thought is that most of the staff will probably end up using public transportation since the Howard L Street is nearby. But if anybody does need to park, or they can, do a little carpooling or whatever to bring in at that time. But most of it's going to be nighttime use for the most part. The restaurant will be open to serve lunch, but I think the heaviest portion will be at nighttime when actually there's less use right now on Howard Street.
And did you say you were going to be maintaining a garage door look, or actual garage doors along the alley there?
There will be at least one door that will operate to get deliveries for the brewery and the restaurant in the back. But beyond that, it would just maintain the garage door look.
Okay.
So that if it ever needed to be turned back into a garage, it can be.
Okay.
Did you draw up any plans that did not require the elimination of 8 off-street parking spaces?
We tried to squeeze everything we could into the front portion of the building, but we could not with the microbrewery attached is kind of the biggest problem. We also needed some storage for the restaurant. We've got a cooler and freezer back there that will be utilized for the restaurant, and there's a number of dry storage shelving units that will be back there too.
If the microbrewery weren't attached, would there be room for the 8 parking spaces?
No, there would not.
Could the patio area be shrunk and still have room for the 8 spaces?
There's no way to get parking in the patio area, if that's what you're trying to get at, or if we tore down the garage. I'm not sure what you're...
I guess I'm trying to figure out what about the project requires the elimination of the parking spaces and how it might be designed around.
Just in it, utilizing any portion of the garage is going to reduce some parking spaces no matter what. And we needed at least probably 2 bays worth as a minimum just for the restaurant itself. The other 6 bays that were going to be used for the microbrewery, it's just kind of one of the features that the owners really want to have for this restaurant in order to make it a special place to come to, given that Howard is kind of a declined retail area right now. We're trying to find some way to attract people to the business.
And is there a plan with respect to potential vehicular needs, patron-wise or et cetera, particularly for evenings? Has there been any discussion with respect to whether or not this location would warrant valet use at all?
Yes, the owners do plan to do valet if it becomes pretty busy at nighttime. And they've got the city lot down the street plus the Sherwin-Williams lot to be able to use for some valet parking.
What about late night? I assume microbrewery, the operating hours, they're going to stay open a little bit later than, non-microbrewery type restaurant. I know Purple Line shuts down at some point. I mean, what do you have plans to negotiate with the city or Sherwin-Williams for employees? And some employees, I'm sure, will drive.
Yes, that's the plan. We haven't gotten that agreement yet in place because the business owners contacted the manager of the store at Sherwin-Williams, but they have to go to the national headquarters to get approval. So we haven't gotten that approval yet.
Okay.
But the city, we have talked to the city about it, and there could be an agreement in place. It's just a matter of executing that if we need to.
So you're saying the city was in favor or was willing to?
Yes.
Okay.
City staff is in favor of utilizing that city lot because it's pretty underutilized right now.
Wait, sorry, I think I thought I was presuming we were talking about the garage, but we're not. We're talking about the city lot. Okay.
Can we see the city lot on?
Yeah, that's
aerial?
what Matt was just pointing out
That's
to me.
the-
There's
Oh, thank
a
you. So that-
aerial
that red-
has
Little
the,
red thing right
Got it.
on Chicago
Oh,
Avenue.
yes, that little lot.
the dot to the right there.
Yeah, nobody parks there at night.
Okay, so, and we don't have any, and there aren't meters there, so that we're allowed to work out a lease
Yeah,
program for
there's
that.
meters all
Okay.
along Howard Street.
Okay, so.
Sorry, I may have missed the fineness of your testimony on this, but the memorandum says that the applicant is looking into leasing spaces from Sherwin-Williams. Have you done that?
Yes.
And is that
We're
going
looking
to
into it,
happen?
but we don't have the agreement in place yet.
So,
That's what we were just talking about.
Yeah, I didn't
the
understand how far
applicant
that had
then, it
gotten.
seems like, would be comfortable with a condition that required either an agreement with Sherwin-Williams or the
city.
city for that scenario.
Yes.
Okay. And it also seems to me like, sounds like we shouldn't have staff parking beyond the 4 spaces probably, but should there be, it seems logical that staff parking should not be on Howard Street. I mean, I know like in downtown we do off-street parking completely, but every minimum in this location, it seems like off Howard Street should be applicable. Given the for staff parking?
As somebody who lives on one of those side streets and knowing that
Well, if it's that busy, the side streets are going to be full of patrons anyways. So that's worse, right? Than them
no, because the
parking-
patron's only going to park there for an hour and a half.
But they're constantly coming and going and driving around. Whereas if they can get a spot out front, they're not driving up and down the street constantly.
Are there any permits or restrictions on Callan or any of those streets?
There are not at present. There is a discussion, and the alderman is here, so she can tell me if I'm not speaking correctly. The area to the west of Custer by Brummel Park, so from Custer to Ridge, Howard to, I don't know how far, the tracks, will be implementing or has proposed to implement the first stage of parking, which means anybody with an Evanston parking permit in their window would be allowed to park there. Basically what it's doing is it's preventing people from Chicago from parking on Evanston streets overnight in that area.
What about evening, like day and evening?
Anybody with an Evanston parking sticker can park there.
But nobody.
You don't need a permit.
Right, but nobody
During the-
during daytime or evening hours, you'd still have to have that Evanston sticker to park there.
They're
Is that-
proposing.
No, but just for overnight. 6 to 6. So the evening,
Yes.
that presumably patrons of the restaurant would be arriving and trying to park.
If they park there and they have an Evanston parking permit,
Right.
they're perfectly legal.
Right.
The
But
city
if they
sticker, I'm
have,
sorry,
but if
city
they have
sticker.
a Wilmette or a Chicago or a,
They will be possibly
they would
be
get ticketed.
ticketed.
Interesting. Okay.
Well, if it comes to that,
Does your
if
owner
it
know
comes to
about
that,
that?
the owner's going to have to do something
Yeah, he is.
they're going to have to do something on their own to work around that, because that will obviously require them to accommodate for that if they want patrons to come. So,
Would the owner be amenable to a condition that they lease or provide off-street parking for staff?
yeah, I think that's what we just covered.
Yeah,
so.
he said that.
That they'd agree to
Yeah,
that?
that either they, work out a lease agreement with Sherwin-Williams or the city, but in one way or another, they work out that lease agreement.
Okay.
So we've covered that base. I was just commenting with respect to
Yes.
staff parking on Howard. Normally, we try to limit staff parking on streets, period, and we can certainly, similar to other scenarios, say, okay, well, you have to have at least the 4 leased spaces that are, is it? No, wait. Why did I get 4? That's not a number.
8 is the required number of spaces.
8, sorry, okay. I don't know where I got 4. I have that in my head.
So one of the requirements for granting a major variance is that there is a hardship or practical difficulty that's peculiar to the property. Can you state what that hardship is here?
Yes, it's that there isn't enough space available in the building to operate the restaurant without taking over the parking.
Because of the inclusion of the microbrewery.
Right.
Is the microbrewery planned to be owned and operated by the restaurant?
Yes. Yeah, that's one of the partners that's involved in the business. And also the owners of the business are Evanston residents too, just so you know, so they'll have their Evanston sticker on their car,
But they'll be in leased space somewhere else, so it won't matter.
Right.
So, okay, so they're removing 8, but the question is the standard, when they remove 8, is the replacement standard 13? Well, we can get to that. I don't think that's huge. Okay. I know that I saw another hand, so anything else, Mr. Lash, at the moment?
Not for me, no.
Okay. All right, well, let's get to public comment, and then we can come back around as necessary. Ma'am, did you want to say anything?
Yes, my name is Loretta Jackson, and I live at 146 Clyde. I was concerned about the 8 off-street parking because there is difficulty parking in that area. There are actually 2 to 3 businesses on Howard Street currently that take up a lot of the parking in that area. I own a condo there, and if I'm not home by 7, which I got to pray now that I find a parking when I get home, or I might have to park 4 blocks or 5 blocks from my resident. And so I'm concerned with this new business, although I'm glad you are moving in, but this taking up off-street parking is a little concern of mine. So I want to know, how is this going to impact myself as well as our neighbors? You're saying that there's a city lot and it's not utilized, but that's not what I see. I do see that it is being utilized a lot. And I also see that currently, as it stands, and I have been counting, and I have contacted my alderman as well by sending her emails, letting her know that I have to spend $99 for a sticker for our Evanston, and I count how many stickers. Like, I get home tonight about 6 o'clock. There's about 40 cars on my way home, 2 blocks, and maybe out of 40 cars, 11 have Evanston stickers. So that tells you how many cars may be parked in Evanston that are not belonging to the city of Evanston. So I'm concerned about this business taking up 8 off-street parking and also moving in the neighborhood and utilizing the parking as a restaurant. That is my concern.
Thank you.
I've got actually one question for.
Oh, ma'am.
Sorry, I'm just curious. What do you see in the morning when you walk back to your car? Is it like? I mean, this is totally anecdotal, of course. It's not a formal research study here, but what do you see? Are they Evanston stickers overnight, or what happens? What happens to those cars?
Well, they're parked there. I mean,
so they're still there.
Maybe in the morning
maybe
is not so much, because by the time I leave out in the morning, most of the cars are gone. A lot of the cars are gone, but in the evening, it's easier to count to see how many cars. I'm just curious in the evening how many cars are there. But in the morning, I get up, and if I'm, I move my cars from, now you have to move it from one side of the street to the other on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. But if you move your car, you get out and you look, you can just kind of see. I like to look and see how many cars still, have stickers on them. And it's not that many cars. I mean, so I'm starting to do this because I want to send a report. Why do I have to pay $99 and I get a ticket if I don't have the sticker on my car? And all of these other cars are here in Evanston. They don't have a sticker. So I thought it was the businesses that were taking up the
spots.
Spots, especially if I get home. Like I said, now I'm here at this meeting, and then I can say, oh my God, I mean, am I going to get a parking space when I get home? Who knows? I mean, I might have to park 4 blocks. Then some people say, well, try to park in Chicago, but I don't live in Chicago. I live in Evanston. So. Thank you. Mostly in the morning, there's not that many cars there that don't have the stickers. But there are some. It's still a lot of cars there that don't have the sticker. And what a lot of the neighbors believe is happening is a lot of the condos are emptying and are moving, and people are moving in, and they're just not registering their cars. That might be happening too, as well as the businesses are. Opening up. We have a new restaurant bar, and people don't want to park there on Howard Street, so they park on Kellen, and they park on Clyde and the other street that's there. So, so they don't have to pay a meter.
Thank you. Mr. Reno.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Summers. Just for point of clarification, the lot, again, the city lot that we're referring to in this application for possible parking is at the corner of Howard and Clark. In the evening, that's mostly vacant. Very few people park there. There's at least one residential lot in the neighborhood that the resident may have just been referring to. Our observation as staff has also been on Howard Street at night. The parking is very light at the meters on both sides of the street. Overall, staff has looked at this carefully through site plan and through community and economic development and also public works. We feel very confident that the parking to be generated can be handled in terms of one or both lots, off-street lots that we referred to earlier this evening, and also street parking. We also have a provision where we work with the restaurant to institute valet parking if that's necessary. We don't necessarily believe that will be necessary. We would hope it would be necessary just based on large volume of people coming to this use, which we very much feel would revitalize Howard Street substantially.
Actually, while you're here, Mr. Reno, just to clarify, since I've got some thoughts running through my head, the city lot that we were just talking about, would that be available for lease all day or only at night?
It could be. It certainly is available at night and would be available during the day. We'd have to look at the other leases that are there, if any. But historically, that has been very, very lightly used over the past 20 years, with the exception of when the Bristol development was under construction on Howard Street east of Chicago, the high-rise there. They used that lot for staging and construction employee parking.
I guess I'm thinking some sort of combination, because now, based kind of on the discussion, I'm thinking no on-street staff parking, which would necessitate, even if they got the Sherwin-Williams deal, at least a few spots from the city in the city parking lot on an all-day basis.
I think it depends on how you're looking at it. I think it depends on how many employees actually drive their cars. We can assume some
it
will
won't
come.
be zero, I guess, is
Right. There'll be some, certainly. We'd also encourage on-street parking at night by the patrons of this use. We think that will put more eyes on the street and only make the street safer.
Mm-hmm.
I would also comment that street parking during the day in the neighborhood is not particularly problematic, with the exception of street cleaning days sometimes.
Right, but are we saying, but I was just wondering if we would be trying to carry through the note I'm talking about staff. I'm saying no staff parking on City Street is what I'm trying to say.
On the street? Well, oh, you mean in the neighborhoods? So at Howard Street's metered parking, so you couldn't, if you're staff, you can't park there, theoretically.
I've seen it done with them.
Theoretically, you should get ticketed.
Running out and filling the meter.
But you should still get ticketed for that if the parking services are up to snuff. That's what those little chalk things are for.
Anyway, so I guess, so I'm sort of, Mr. Lash, how many spaces are available in the Sherwin-Williams if you are able to get that lease worked out?
I'm not sure offhand. I haven't done a survey of that.
Ballpark, more than 10, more than 20?
I'm guessing it's at least 10.
Okay.
It's a pretty good-sized lot.
I would say there's probably 10 to 15 spaces.
Okay. Just for the record, was there anyone else who wished to speak with us regarding this project on Howard? Yeah, I mean, you can. I mean, obviously, you get your final opinion eventually anyways. Sure. Alderman Rainey.
My name is Ann Rainey. I'm the alderman of the ward. I live at 1707 Dobson. I did a survey of lots in the neighborhood in a 2-block stretch, the 700 block and the 600 block of Howard Street. There are, and I'm including both sides of the street, there are exactly 6 large lots, each one in excess of 12 spaces that are virtually empty from 7 o'clock in the morning, which is the earliest I surveyed, till 2 o'clock in the morning, which is the latest I surveyed. They are all available to valet parkers to make deals with for leasing space. I would say there are at least 100 empty spots in these lots within a 2-block lengthwise distance from this proposed restaurant. So I just see that nighttime parking in the neighborhoods is not going to be a problem. And I spoke with the owner of one of the owners, who told me that absolutely they are going to provide for valet parking. So I really don't see that there's a problem. I can also tell you, in the 25 years I've observed this property, and I've been very close to the people who have rented space in the building that is going to be the restaurant, there has never once been a car parked in any of those garages. There have been numerous auto repair shops in those garages. There has been storage for off-site stores that were not occupying those spaces. Never once was there a car parked in those. This doesn't affect your desire to have the employees park off-site, because I think they should. And the lot at the corner of Howard and Chicago Avenue I think, has about 6 leased spaces. The rest is completely empty or being used by illegal parkers 24 hours a day.
Thank you.
Has there, Ann, while you're up there, has there been any discussion with Gateway, the Dominick's?
Gateway is impossible to deal with. I know that when Amphora and the Gateway Bar and Grill was there, they had a difficult time negotiating spaces, and now the Hop House, I'm not sure what their agreement is, but I know that you can't, you just, there's no point in dealing. We don't even need them. We really don't need them. There's plenty of spaces off the street that are not in the neighborhoods to negotiate leases for.
Okay. Anything further from anyone before we close the record and begin our deliberations on this? Seeing none, we will close the record on this case and begin our deliberations. Okay, so basically, just to summarize my thoughts, I'm sort of landing on the, I presume at least a manager 2 or whatever, or the guy that's, I presume that a few staff people are going to be coming and parking. Not the entire staff, but a few. So I think that it makes sense to, and similarly, we've provided accommodation for many other businesses by via lease in the neighboring properties for their required parking, to fulfill their requiring parking. And I think that we could do this in this sort of scenario. I am inclined to sort of split it up, though, a little bit in terms of saying that, I don't know, I think a certain number of those spaces should be leased on a fully available 24-hour basis to cover staff, and I would be amenable to the rest of the spaces, being on a peak time sort of basis.
I'm thinking about the future use of the property, and I mean, this is the use that's now, but we're granting a property of this size, a commercial property of this size, if we pass this, the ability to eliminate 8 required parking spaces, which is what's required for that size property. And so, considering the applicant's willingness to obtain the equivalent number of spaces on a leased basis, I'd recommend that we make them all full-time available parking spaces. To me, that's the mitigating factor that makes me feel like I'd agree with this variation. Otherwise, I think they're creating a situation for themselves by insisting on the addition of a microbrewery in the back where the garage is that otherwise could be avoided. But again, I feel that that's mitigated by their willingness to effectively procure the same 8 parking spaces in an available nearby lot.
Point of information, the city lot, any permits in that lot would be 24-hour permits.
That's why I was kind of asking earlier.
Sherman-Williams, obviously they have a business to operate when
right,
they're
and that's
open.
why I was thinking there might
there could be
be
supplementary parking at night. Certainly, I think the plan was after Sherwin-Williams is closed, that would be available.
Right, and that's why I was sort of thinking that maybe the Sherwin-Williams, while a very good solution, is maybe not, and certainly will work for their valet, et cetera. I don't know that that's the 100% solution, which I think incorporates spaces out of the city parking lot for staff.
I would tend to agree with Scott, actually. If this restaurant is successful, a restaurant of this size and scope, they are going to need plenty of staff there during the day to tend to things. So, and I would say some of those staff would be in a sort of executive position, then they would be more inclined to drive than the nighttime staff or the lunchtime staff. So I agree with Scott that I think we should say, you've got to have
full-time.
8 full-time, yeah.
Okay.
I'd also suggest that I'm not sure, as Beth said, how many staff will drive, but I would also suggest we impose a condition that staff not be permitted to use street parking in the area.
Yes, that was...
Whether the 8 spaces that they agree to lease is sufficient or not.
Agreed.
Well, my only thought is like going, the concern to add 8 spaces makes sense, but if it's to alleviate the possibility of going forward that this building is now eliminated 8 spaces, are we going to require that any future business also lease 8 spaces?
Yeah, that could be that's part of the special use condition.
Well, it's not special use, it's
variance,
a variation.
yeah.
But yeah, we can condition the variation on that running with the property.
I'm not for or against that, I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah,
that
no,
would be...
as a variance, it would carry forward. As a restriction, I'm not really sure how it carries forward, but I don't think I need to know that tonight. Anything else then? Okay, so to clarify, we have seemingly positive view with 2 conditions: that staff not be permitted to park on the street, that the applicant seek and maintain 8 off-street parking spaces in the vicinity for lease or ownership, either leased or owned. For future kind of considerations, it wouldn't matter if they were owned or leased, either leased or owned, that are available 24 hours a day. Is that it? Okay. Somebody want to make well, what are we here?
Do you want to run through the
Sorry,
standards?
I'm getting a step ahead of myself. Sorry. I'm wondering why nobody's speaking up and it's supposed to be me. Really quickly to run through standards, and I believe we are recommending via a major variation to City Council, correct? So our standards for a major variation are: the requested variation will not have a substantial adverse impact on the use, enjoyment, or property values of the adjoining properties. I believe given the considerations that we've put into place regarding off-street parking for staff, we can mitigate that, as much of that with that which is within our purview. So I believe the standard has been met.
I agree.
Agreed.
Standard number 2, the requested variation is in keeping with the intent of the zoning ordinance. Certainly, we are working to re-understand what Howard Street is and develop that use, and as a part of that, continued involvement of off-site parking considerations is going to be necessary. So considering the work that we've done, I believe this standard has been met as well.
Yes.
Standard number 3, the alleged hardship or practical difficulty is peculiar to the property. It's actually somewhat peculiar to this property that it even has off-street parking at all as a sort of commercial property. So I certainly believe the standard has been met as well.
Yes.
Agrees. Standard number 4, the property owner would suffer particular hardship or practical difficulty as distinguished from mere inconvenience if the strict letter of the regulations were to be carried out. There was some discussion about my kind of microbrewery or not, but I think I also would note that I think the microbrewery is what makes this potentially a successful and viable business. I think that sort of is the business.
I would add that and the beer garden, so you need the space.
Yeah, I agree. So from that standpoint, I believe there sort of isn't a business of this format in this area without the space that's available. So I believe the standard has been met as well.
I don't think the standard has been met, but I think that it's mitigated by the agreement to repurpose parking on a different or reappropriate parking that would replace the space.
Okay. Standard number 5, the purpose of the variation is not based exclusively upon a desire to extract additional income from the property. I think while this is indeed a business, it is along a commercial thoroughfare, and I don't believe that the expectation is for significant additional income beyond the general expectation of a commercial storefront space.
I think if you look at the second page, which are the public benefit alternatives to Standard 5, if you look our letter G, kind of sums that up: the business, commercial, and manufacturing development to enhance the local economy and strengthen the tax base.
Agreed. Standard number 6, the alleged difficulty or hardship has not been created by any person having an interest in the property, given the unusual sort of situation that there is, in fact, a garage on this commercial property. That certainly was not created by the applicant, and I believe that given the conditions that we've put into place, that the standard is met as well.
I'd just remake my same comment here. I think that I don't think the standard has been met, but I think it's mitigated by the conditions we're imposing.
Agree.
Standard number 7, the requested variation is limited to the minimum change necessary to alleviate the particular hardship or practical difficulty which affects the property. This was probably what we alluded to somewhat in our discussion in terms of what amount of parking and to what degree this needs to be met, and given the conditions that we are proposing, I believe through those we are meeting that minimum change necessary.
I agree.
Agreed.
Okay, so that being said, we've moved through the standards for a major variation, and we are recommending to the City Council with respect to this project because it is a parking variation. Is there a motion?
I'll move in ZBA matter 13 ZMJV 0022 that we, the zoning board, recommend that City Council approve the major variation requested with the following conditions: that the property owner be required to procure 8 parking spaces full-time to replace the 8 spaces that are being taken away by the property development, and that employees of the business on the property not be allowed to park on street. And I guess that the property be developed consistent with the testimony and record.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Before we vote, I would just make an addition maybe to that, that the applicant also seek out valet parking for peak hours to alleviate the congestion on the neighbors.
I'd accept that amendment.
Second. Accept.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed? I believe that was unanimous then. So the motion has been carried and will be recommended over to City Council. Our next case this evening is 1404 to 1406 Greenleaf Street. And with that, if we could read it into the record, Melissa.
Russell and Paula Wagner, property owners, apply for major zoning relief to replace an existing detached garage with a larger detached garage. The applicants request a separation between the principal structure and accessory structure detached garage of 4.1 feet where 10 feet is required. Zoning Code Section 6462C. The Zoning Board of Appeals makes a recommendation to City Council. I'm sorry, that is incorrect. The Zoning Board of Appeals is the determining body for this case. Included as part of the documents on record, variance application submitted March 23rd, 2013, standards form, zoning analysis, plat of survey dated May 11th, 2005, proposed site plan, elevations, 3 letters of support, aerial map, zoning map of property, image of property, and Spark meeting minutes of April 3rd, 2013.
And I'm going to also note that a photograph was, I'm on the right property, right? Yes. A photograph was handed out to the board immediately prior to the meeting, but since it was not received until the meeting, I'm going to put that in as applicant's Exhibit A, and for the purposes of the record. And with that, can we swear you in?
Hello.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth throughout the course of these proceedings?
Yes, we do.
Okay, thank you. And again, just for the record, your names and addresses before you begin.
Russell Wagner, live at 1404 Greenleaf.
And Paula Wagner at 1404 Greenleaf.
Thank you.
We moved to Evanston in 1982, lived at 1303 Washington for 30 years, raised our family. That was the old Victorian house, which we totally restored and built a beautiful new garage and an addition, all resulting in getting a landmark status and a preservation award. So I'm saying this to let you have some idea that our approach to a property is to really improve it, do what we can. It's aesthetically pleasing and the highest of quality. We're seeking to create a new garage which will actually hold our car. As we age, we would like to be able to park our car in a garage and not scrape the ice off of it. The existing garage, you'll notice in the photograph, is a metal shack that is dilapidated and rusting. The floor of it is about 3 inches below grade, and it floods from the alley, which has been raised over the last 100 years. We propose, if we're going to invest the $20,000, $30,000, that we make it big enough to hold a car. So, since both of these properties are B1 zoning, it's allowed to be on the property line, but still increasing the width by 3 feet reduces the space between the garage and the house. Previously, it was like 2 different spaces. There's a little bay window where it's narrowest, and then there's a little wider area, as you see from the site plan. Basically, we're reducing those by 3 feet. So previously, the greater space was a little over 10 feet. We're reducing it to 7 feet, 3 inches. And the lesser space previously was about 7 feet and a little bit. We're reducing it to 4 feet and a little bit. We went before Spark. They had some wonderful input about making it fire resistant, which we intending to build it solid brick, the traditional, without framing, solid brick wall, no veneer brick. And we have support of our neighbors. They're quite supportive. Kind of running down the list of whether it has adverse impact on our neighbors. Apparently it doesn't. They're would love to get rid of this eyesore, I think. Our hardship is that we really need to be able to park our car, and also I'm using the space above as a loft to store wood that I use in my musical instrument restoration. That's what I do. The main building on this property is a 2-story brick building with a storefront and an apartment, and we moved into the apartment. Run my business in the first.
Yeah, I was going to say, maybe between you guys or city staff, somebody can help us out a little bit. I mean, this isn't our usual, like, take down a garage, put up a garage scenario, because I've got 2 buildings on the same lot. And I presume it's not subdivided. This is the entire lot, and we just have 2 structures?
It's like a coach house or something.
Okay.
Correct. There are 2 primary structures on the lot.
And that's?
The front structure is, the first floor is the applicant's business, the second floor is where they reside, and the other primary structure, which is in the back, is a rental property with the detached garage near it.
Okay. And that's just like, these are just really old, existing, non-conforming situations, or?
Correct.
We do not intend to rent this or extract any money out of it, and to use it for our own use.
And the
other
second house never was a garage?
No.
Right.
It's always been occupied. We bought the building, and the same renters have been in there, were in there when we bought it. There's other alternatives. There is no other place to move this thing. The other alternative, I suppose, is just to leave it. Maybe jack it up and pour a new floor under it. Anything else?
Just for the record, was there anyone else who wished to speak to us regarding the 1404-1406 Greenleaf Street project? I'll note for the record that there are none. Claire, you might be able to help me out on this. I know the applicant has mentioned working with the fire standards. Is it normally 1 hour for a connector?
1 hour,
Yeah. Okay.
Cavity, masonry cavity wall is fine. That creates over 1 hour.
Solid brick walls.
You're going to do CMU cavity wall with a face brick, right?
No, solid, traditional
Oh, so
8-inch thick brick wall.
right?
Don't see so many of those.
No, it's like we do it the traditional way, so.
Okay. Okay, so
Searching for proper antique brick to match the building at the moment.
so it sounds like a 1 hour wall standard where, if we place that, that would be not an issue for you guys.
No,
so.
it's required by building code.
Okay. I say that only because it's I was actually mentioning earlier, just in terms of this case being before us, it's a weird thing that I'm not really sure why why it comes before us, because the reasoning for that condition is really more about the building code than it is about the zoning code. To have that setback is really about building code and fire safety than it is about zoning. So it's certainly my concern whenever we do have a case like this, is that it is more about fire safety than it is about zoning, and I want to make sure that we are still attempting to cover people. Is there anything else from the board then on this?
Were there any comments regarding lot coverage and stormwater issues, just because you have two primary buildings and you're just adding to your footprint?
The square footage is fine by zoning standards.
If I could add to that, because it is B zoning, building lot coverage does not apply. Instead, FAR, floor area ratio, applies. Maximum allowed in the zoning district is 2.0, and with the proposed garage size, they will be at 0.49.
Anything else? All right, then if that's it, I believe we will close the record and begin our deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the zoning board is determining in this case major zoning relief with respect to an accessory structure setback. Very quickly, it does not seem that this will have an adverse impact on the use or enjoyment of adjoining properties. This is the specific code that we are referencing impacts only the property that it's contained on itself. The requested variation, it's certainly in keeping with the zoning ordinance that we maintain as much off-street parking as possible. Essentially, this is, as much as it may be B1, it's still a fairly residential area. So that's certainly important. So I believe the standard's been met. Standard number 3, the alleged hardship or practical difficulty is peculiar to the property. I'm sure there's plenty of others, but I haven't had opportunity to review another scenario of a house behind a business like this, so I would say that that certainly makes it peculiar. So I believe that standard has been met. The property owner would suffer particular hardship or practical difficulty as distinguished from a mere inconvenience if the strict letter of the regulations were to be carried out as the property owner indicated. The existing structure is in need of work and is not up to sort of standards in terms of fitting a modern vehicle within and maneuvering around, so the standard has also been met. The purpose of the variation is not based exclusively upon a desire to extract additional income from the property. As the applicant stated, they only hope to improve the property itself and improve their enjoyment of the property, so the standard has been met as well. Standard number 6, the alleged difficulty or hardship has not been created by any person having an interest in the property. This is an existing structure and condition, and certainly the feasibility of fitting a vehicle within that structure, within the dated structure, has not been created by anyone having an interest in the property. Standard number 7, the requested variation is limited to the minimum change necessary to alleviate the particular hardship or practical difficulty which affects the property, and I believe that standard has also been met. And again, the considerable impact in this scenario is on the property owner themselves. And with that, is there anything further before we go to a motion? Okay.
I would move in the matter 13 ZMJV 0020 that we grant the requested variance for 1404, 1406 Greenleaf Street. With the condition, I'm going to turn to my architect friends here, that the structure have a 1-hour fire rating.
Correct.
And that other little last thing.
And that the structure be within compliance with the testimony and documents submitted herein.
Second.
I'm going to just clarify the fire rated wall. Sorry.
I asked you to clarify.
I realized after well, construction could mean the roof. All right, which won't be fire rated. Anyways, was there a second?
Yes, second.
Okay. It's been moved
Agreed.
and seconded. All those in favor,
Aye.
please say aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried. Good luck.
What sort of instruments do you restore? My daughter plays the cello.
If you look at this
I did
email.
for 2 years.
Nice ones.
You played for 2 years?
The cello, yeah.
Do you restore or do you make them? Really? So who do you sell them to? Siemens or Differ as a hobby? Oh, fantastic. Nice. They all come from China now, so this is good.
All right.
Yeah.
Making it around the corner to our final case this evening of 1104 Davis Street. Melissa?
Joel Stein, lessee, applies for a special use for a resale establishment at 1104 Davis Street. 1104 Davis Street is located in the D4 Downtown Transition District, which requires a special use permit for resale establishments to operate. Zoning Code Section 61153. The Zoning Board of Appeals makes a recommendation to City Council, the determining body for this case. Included as part of the documents on record are the special use application submitted March 27th, 2013, zoning analysis, plat of survey dated March 21st, 2003, interior storefront plan, aerial view of property, zoning map, and Spark meeting minutes of April 10th, 2013.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth throughout the course of these proceedings?
I do.
Thank you. And if you could give us your name and address.
I'm Joel Stein. I live at 520 Cary Court in Wilmette. And I realize now I should have brought snacks, being the last one. And I want to thank Melissa. Melissa told me to be here early at, she said 5, so I get a good parking spot and a good seat. So this is, it's been quite a nice night. I'm kidding. So I'm planning to open a small retail store at 1104 Davis by the name of Not Fade Away. I currently run and operate a corporate liquidation company based in Niles, and we do large corporate liquidations, and we repurpose and resell used office furniture around the country. And I get a lot of surplus, and I donate as much as I can, and but I can't donate enough. So it fills up in my warehouse, and so my plan is to sell these things, and they would be your chairs that you're sitting in here, and small computer tables, and file cabinets, and that sort of thing, which I think would be ideal for the Northwestern community and for any resident who has a home office or a kid who's going away to school. And we're going to sell these things and give away the money to a handful of organizations, the YWCA, YOU, and Family Focus are the three that we have our eyes on. And so while we're not going to be a not-for-profit, at least not designated with that legal status, because it was expensive to do the filings, and it really didn't get me where I needed to go, because I'm not seeking any grants or any sort of thing. I just simply want to give away the money. So we'll be a for-profit corporation, which will not be making any money, I hope. So it's a small 600 square foot place, and it'll be moderately merchandised with the things that I mentioned before, your home office type things. And we'll probably make deliveries a couple times a week in the mornings.
Is the thought that this looks shoppy or that it looks warehousey?
No, shoppy. It'll be a retail shop. It won't be, I understand now why I'm here, which is everybody's fearful of a thrift store or another thrift store, as it may be. And this is not that. This is just simply a retail shop with gently used office furniture. So we'll have, like I said, small computer tables, desk lamps, and small rolling file cabinets, and task chairs and guest chairs and that sort of thing.
It seems like a small space for a furniture resale business. Where will you store the furniture that'll be for sale?
Sure, it's at my warehouse now in Niles, and it'll remain there. So really what I'm doing is I have 30,000 feet there, and I'll be just, it fills up. I mean, it fills up every day. I could fill that warehouse in a week with all the things that I'm not able to sell. So I'm hopeful that I'll just be relieving rack after rack as we are hopefully successful doing this.
So as you would stock the space and then restock, refresh your stock from your warehouse.
Right. I expect a couple times a week, like you said. It's not very big, so to fill it up is 4 van loads. And if I'm selling 20 chairs a week, that's 2 van loads, which I can deliver in 10 minutes.
So the expectation is that this would not be like, oh, the truck comes in and drops stuff off. It's more of like major delivery action is to your warehouse, and sort of like a smaller delivery.
Very small deliveries
would be coming into this space.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
And help me out with the scenario here. Do you have access to the rear, or are you coming in off of Davis Street?
It's gated, so it wouldn't be well suited for making deliveries there. If you're familiar with that little spot, there's parking right there. It's a short.
It's where Benison's is, isn't it? It's the building, or like right.
Further block.
Yeah.
It's right across from the post office.
Oh, that. Okay. Got it.
The
Got it.
studio
Yeah.
and flower shop. And so we'll back up our van at 8 in the morning and in 10 minutes unload the 20 chairs that we hopefully sold the day before. I don't anticipate a whole lot of, or I would love to see more traffic, but that's actually a kind of a quiet little block. I think a lot of the parking that is there is related to the post office. It's kind of a nice, sleepy little block that could hopefully use some more retail traffic.
And if we restricted this to furniture and furnishings, then that would cover your...
It'll mess up my bed and breakfast plans, but yeah. The furniture's fine.
Okay.
This is where I get to throw in my McDonald's comment.
No, let's add a porch.
Too loopy. All right.
Beth's not here. We don't have to worry about
You're not going to run any stand-up comedy business at night out of the space, are you?
It would fail miserably. I know it would.
I don't know about that.
Any other concerns from staff in terms of not necessarily, I presume, since I haven't really heard anything or seen anything here, concerns, and it doesn't seem from Spark that there were significant concerns with respect to this specific user, but is there anything else that might be recommended language-wise in terms of a potential other, in terms of the overall special use? That's where I was going with the whole furniture and furnishings thing or whatever.
Only if you feel it necessary to limit the hours of deliveries.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, if he's pulling in a van and putting a quarter in the meter, what the heck? Is kind of what I think about that.
There's no alley behind this building, right?
There's not. There's a gangway, which is, I think, more residential and more trash related. Yeah.
How big a truck or van are we talking about?
A service vehicle, so your typical 12-foot van. Yeah, no big box trucks. I think when we make our initial move-in, we might need 4 trips worth of that van. And then as we sell throughout the week, I would expect a couple days a week in the morning to make a delivery to the shop. But I also don't foresee the buyers of the furniture needing trucks to move their furniture. Nothing's going to be particularly big. I think everything will go by the way of putting it in the back of their vehicles.
Just out of curiosity, you said you sell, you liquidate and sell this stuff nationwide as kind of part of your other work. Have you done one of these shop scenarios somewhere else yet?
No, I don't even have the luxury of somebody else having done one. I don't know anybody who's opened a retail shop for the purpose of selling furniture and to give away the money. I grew up in my dad's business, which I did 20 years, and so they had a retail store downtown, and so I learned retail there. But I'm in the wholesale side now, and really just I'm trying to get the product out of my warehouse and into the hands of people who can still use it, and then put some money back into the local orgs here.
Okay. Is there anything else?
What are your proposed hours?
10 to 5. And Monday through Friday, and we're talking about some Saturday hours, which might be even more scaled back, maybe something along the lines of 11 to 4.
Anything else before we close the record? And I'm going to note that there's...
Out of total pure curiosity, which Buddy Holly, Rolling Stones, Dead, what?
Grateful Dead, yeah.
Good man.
All right. With that, I'm going to also note that there's nobody else in the audience from the public to comment with respect to this case, and therefore we will close the record and begin our deliberations. Should we be Melissa, what do you think in terms of like, should we be, as a special use in general, should we be considering hours as part of our? I mean, this is a little bit different. I don't expect it to be open all night, but.
There is the potential that this special use could be carried over in a substitution of special use to the next owner who may want different hours of operation.
All right, so for
I
sake
think
of
if we
argument,
limit the special use to the condition you already made
Furniture
specific,
and furnishings
furniture
thing?
and furnishings, that it's unlikely that the next user would take over that space for that same purpose and need different hours, and if so, would probably come in for a different special use request.
thoughts from this side of the gallery?
I mean, I would just say, if we did a, 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. or something, just a general.
The first thing I wrote down was 8 to 10, but it could also be 7
8
to
to
10
10,
or 7 to
whatever.
10 or whatever.
I mean, like I said, I don't see this type of a retail establishment. If it is a furniture resale, doing a bunch of business at 1 a.m. Although if they're targeting Northwestern students, they might.
That's true.
I wouldn't mind just saying like 7 to 10 for sake of consistency, if you guys don't mind.
That's fine.
Okay. 7 days. I think furniture and furnishings will cover us in terms of the other stuff. Any other conditions?
Sorry, if we're aiming for consistency, don't we usually go like till midnight?
That's for like food establishments, though. Not like people moving stuff in and out of a restaurant. Moving stuff in and out of a place.
I don't know that we have a standard. I just thought that's the time range we usually set for these. Doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, I guess the closest comparison we have are like bar restaurant type things. So,
Right.
Since we've started doing the hours explicitly, so that's why I was just thinking of it being different.
Either way, I'm
Yeah.
good with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's just decide something quick.
All right. Anything else? Motion? Somebody, please.
Do you want to do standards, since this is council? It's going to take 2
I
seconds.
can read them. I have them here if you want me to.
Forgot this is council. All right. Thank you, Matt. I told you I was going to be slow tonight. You had pre-warning. All right. Standard number 1, the requested special use is on the list of special uses for the zoning district, and it is. Standard number 2, the requested special use is in keeping with the purposes and policies of comprehensive general plan and the zoning ordinance. This is certainly an option for this area, and it is more as a special use probably for the next item. So I believe certainly that standard number 2 has been met, that it is in keeping with the comprehensive general plan and zoning ordinance. Standard number 3, the special use will not cause a negative cumulative effect when its effect is considered in conjunction with the cumulative effect of various special uses of all types in the immediate neighborhood and on the city as a whole. I do not believe that we have the same space, the same sort of special use in that specific vicinity, especially when you relate it to furniture. However, there is a sort of furniture place down the street that kind of seems like it's similar use, but I don't think in combination that will be a negative cumulative effect. Statement number 4, the requested special use does not interfere with or diminish the value of property in the neighborhood. This storefront is a area, this building is an ever-evolving and revolving use of businesses, so I certainly hope that you will be successful in this new venture, but certainly continue.
By that she means wildly unsuccessful.
Thank you.
But certainly continued use and traffic within that area and the surrounding businesses is certainly a good thing. So it will not diminish the value of the property in the neighborhood. Statement number 5, the requested special use can be adequately served by public facilities and services. This proposal should have very limited demand on public services and facilities, and certainly less than other options for that business location, so the standard has been met. Statement number 6, the requested special use does not cause undue traffic congestion. Presuming the running of the business in substantial compliance with the testimony, the use will not have large cargo drop-off and will primarily be using service van-sized vehicles for their deliveries. So I believe this standard has been met as well. Where's my other piece of paper? Standard number 7, the requested special use preserves significant historical and architectural resources. This is relatively inapplicable, but it is going within an existing storefront and structure. Standard number 8, the requested special use preserves significant natural and environmental features. While it is certainly not applicable to the site itself, we can commend the applicant for doing the very best that he can to try to keep these things out of our landfills. So that standard has been met. And standard number 9, the requested special use complies with all the applicable regulations of the district in which it is located and other applicable ordinances. And we have no indication that it is otherwise not going to be compliant in its use. So that standard has also been met. And with that, thank you, Matt. Do we have a motion?
I would move in the matter of 13 CMJV 0021 regarding 1104 Davis Street that we make a positive recommendation to the City Council that they allow the special use of a resale establishment pertaining to furniture and furnishings, and that we further condition it with the condition of hours being 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days a week.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And the motion is carried unanimously over to City Council. Good luck.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
And if there's nothing further, we will adjourn our meeting for this evening. Thank you.